This isn't healing. It's hard wiring for, or the version of you that flinches, explains, and reacts it. What replaces? It doesn't ask questions. It calculates, controls, and vanishes before retaliation is even possible. Before a king ever commands an army, he conquers something far more important: mental territory. This is where most people lose the war before it even begins. They rush into action. They speak before thinking. They try to prove instead of position. But the king's first battlefield is invisible. It's not the board. It's not the room. It's not the opponent. It's the mind behind the moment, his own and everyone else's. And here's the brutal truth. If you can't dominate the space inside your own mind, you'll be dominated by everyone who can. So, let me break this down for you. Not in motivational fluff, but in ruthless, psychological precision. Mental sovereignty means is you do not react. You choose. Most people live their entire lives like servants to every external trigger. Someone insults them. They respond. Someone praises them. They get addicted. Someone ignores them. They spiral. But the king doesn't play by those rules. He controls the internal chessboard. And that control creates external leverage. You must train your mind to remain still, in chaos and focused in noise, because every reaction they extract from you is a withdrawal from your throne. Here's how you begin. Start treating every emotion like a messenger, not a master. Interrupt your reflexes when you want to defend yourself. Pause. Ask, what would a king do here? Not a boy, not a beggar, a king. This is not about arrogance. It's about emotional positioning. You never beg for attention. You command it by how still your mind remains under pressure. Power isn't just what you say. It's the frame in which others hear what you say. The king doesn't walk into a room and say, "Respect me." He walks in and the room rearranges itself. That's frame control. And it's the second pillar of thinking like a king. Most people enter rooms trying to fit in. The king enters to establish the dominant narrative. He doesn't try to blend into their rhythm. He sets the rhythm. Think about it. In every room, someone's perception becomes the dominant one. Either you're the one defining the situation or you're being defined. So, how do you control the frame? Speak less, but say what shifts the temperature. Kings don't feel silence. They weaponize it. Control the energy you radiate. Nervous energy leaks power. Grounded energy pulls attention. Redefine reality early. If someone criticizes you, reframe it immediately. I don't do cheap praise or cheap criticism. If you want to offer depth, I'll listen. Instant reframe. But most importantly, expect to be respected. The world reads your expectations before it reads your words. A king expects alignment, not permission. The average person only sees the next moment. The king sees the next. 5. This is the third layer of king level thinking. Anticipation, mapping, chessboard thinking. You don't just react to what they say. You ask, why are they saying this now? What are they trying to control in the room? What fear, motive, or agenda is behind their move? Because kings don't fight people. They fight intentions. Let's break it down. When someone compliments you, ask, what do they want? When someone insults, you ask, are they trying to bait me into emotion? Why? When someone stays silent, ask, is this genuine distance or a power test? This isn't paranoia. It's mental preparation for power. You begin mapping the room like a general in a war council. Who's aligned? Who's insecure? Who's a threat disguised as a friend? And instead of speaking first, you listen to control. Kings gather information before they ever move. Every silence is a scan. Every glance is a signal. Train this. Next time you're in a conversation, don't try to speak impressively. Try to observe like a strategist. Watch for the emotion behind the words. then speak to that. That's what kings do. They don't speak to behavior. They speak to what the behavior is trying to hide. The most dangerous man in the room is the one who looks unbothered, not emotionless, not robotic, but calm, deep, still. Because stillness is not weakness. It's stored fire. This is the final dimension of the king's mind. Is command. In chaos, most people react fast and think slow. Kings reverse that. They think faster than the room while moving slower than everyone. That's what makes their words land like thunder. Not because they shout, but because their silence was already a storm. When everyone else is scrambling to respond, chasing applause, defending ego, you stay centered. And because of that, you become the axis around which the room spins. That's how influence begins. With stillness, with emotional control, with commanding pace instead of being dragged by it. You don't wait to be crowned. You install the throne in your mind. Once you start thinking like a king, you'll stop chasing things that only peasants run after. You'll stop proving, stop defending, stop over-explaining. You'll move in silence because you already know. Power doesn't announce itself. It's felt long before it's spoken. So sit still, think deeper, move slower, and when you rise, make sure the room feels it before you say a single word. Before I move forward to part 2, if you're serious about mastering this, don't just watch. Weaponize your mind. Whisper Secret is not a book. It's a psychological weapon built for ruthless intelligence, emotional immunity, and mental dominance. But if you want everything, every book I've written and everyone I will, the Whisperer's Power Bundle gives you all current ebooks, every future release, lifetime access to the full transformation arsenal. Most will scroll. A few will become dangerous. What are these ebooks really? Click the link in the description and see for yourself. The king rules by presence, but the ghost rules by absence. Not all power is seen. Not all dominance walks into the room. Some of it whispers, disrupts, haunts, and then disappears before it can be touched. You've been taught that to be respected, you must always be active, visible, loud. That's a lie. The most powerful moves are made when no one is watching. The most feared players are the ones you can't read, can't reach, and can't predict. Let me teach you the way of the ghost. A method of silent warfare that elevates your presence by reducing your availability. Here's the paradox of power. The more people see of you, the less they value what they see. We live in an age where everyone wants to be constantly seen, posting, updating, oversharing. But understand this, power degrades with familiarity. Mystery is eroded by overexposure. And presence without purpose becomes background noise. A ghost doesn't suffer from this. They appear strategically, not habitually. They speak surgically, not compulsively. They leave before comfort turns into predictability. That's the comfort breeds expectation. Expectation kills awe. If people can predict you, they've already psychologically disarmed you. You're no longer a question. They've answered you. And power never lives in what is already answered. The ghost keeps others guessing. And in that guessing, they create a vacuum of uncertainty that pulls attention like gravity. People mistake silence for absence. But in power dynamics, silence is presence amplified. A ghost doesn't vanish to hide. He vanishes to build pressure. Think about it. When someone talks too much, we ignore them. When someone says little but always leaves an impact, we anticipate their next word. This is the second law of ghost movement. Be rare. So your presence always feels like an event. You must stop thinking your value comes from quantity. It comes from scarcity. Psychologically, humans are wired to assign more value to what is limited. Your time, your attention, your responses when rationed become precious. But when freely given, they become disposable. Here's how to install this in daily life. Delay responses. Intentionally. Make them wait. And conversations while they're still. Engaging. Leave them craving more. Exit. Online and offline spaces without. Announcements. Withdraw during moments. When others expect you to chase. Return. Only when there's leverage to gain. This creates psychological contrast. Your absence becomes louder than most people's presence. And remember, the ghost doesn't disappear randomly. He disappears with intention. His silence is never empty. It's full of implied meaning. Predictability is psychological. Submission. If they can anticipate your moves, you've already lost control of the frame. The ghost never lets them decode the pattern. This is where true influence lives, not in strength but in ambiguity. Humans fear what they don't understand and respect what they can't control. The ghost energy lives in this tension. You show flashes of warmth, then vanish. You deliver value and then retreat into silence. You engage when it serves purpose and disappear when the noise begins. This unpredictability creates mental space in their mind, reserved for you. They begin to think about your absence more than they thought about your presence. And when you reappear, they're already softened. Here's what this looks like. Say less in arguments. Your silence will echo longer than their shouting. Stay still in chaos. Let them unravel while you observe. Give fewer explanations. Let them create their own stories about your intent. Use short, intense statements that imply more than they explain. This energy makes you unreadable, not because you're hiding, but because you are selective with exposure. That's what makes people obsess. That's what makes people imagine more than you show. And in that imagination, you become larger than life. The ghost doesn't need credit. He moves the board without being on the board. This is high-level psychological warfare where you don't even have to confront someone to shift their behavior. Because your absence becomes a signal. Your silence becomes a statement. Your withdrawal becomes a mirror that reflects their need for you. This is how you make others overthink, chase, correct themselves, fear losing you, without saying a word. Example, if someone disrespects you, don't argue. Withdraw. Let them experience the weight of your absence. If someone takes you for granted, vanish. Let the vacuum expose their dependence. If someone plays games, become invisible. Force them to realize the game only works when you participate. This technique removes your emotional labor. You don't educate. You don't justify your worth. You disrupt through silence and reappear only when the leverage is yours. A ghost isn't reactive. He's emotionally sovereign, and that's why he cannot be controlled. They poke, bait, push, insult, flatter, but none of it works because the ghost has trained one of the rarest skills on earth: emotional detachment from reaction. Most people move when they're triggered. The ghost moves when it serves strategy. This means you don't argue when provoked. You observe. You don't rush to prove yourself. You pull back. You don't clarify every misunderstanding. You let misinterpretation become a weapon. You move only when you gain psychological ground, not to clear your name. That restraint, that calm, that control terrifies them because now they realize you cannot be baited. You cannot be guilt. You move like a shadow, but with the mind of a predator. This is not about isolation. It's about influence without dependence. The ghost does not vanish because he fears confrontation. He vanishes to build value, preserve power, and disrupt predictability. His power doesn't come from being everywhere. It comes from being impossible to replace. When you master the art of selective silence, rare presence, and invisible control, you don't chase impact, you become the impact. So move slowly, speak rarely, withdraw often, and when you return like a myth that became real. A king without mystery becomes a target. A ghost without direction becomes irrelevant. But when you merge both, you become something the world doesn't know how to fight. a ruler. Without a throne, a shadow with a strategy, a presence that disappears and still commands. This is the final evolution. When you no longer have to choose between visibility and mystery, dominance and distance, you become a hybrid force, calculating, unreadable, magnetic. This is where most people stop growing because it demands a paradoxical kind of power to be seen only when it strengthens your position, to vanish only when it increases your influence, to stay calm while calculating war. Let's break it down. When you think like a king and move like a ghost, presence becomes deliberate. It is no longer something you give away. It is something you deploy. Most people are addicted to being seen. They feel irrelevant unless they're constantly visible, constantly explaining, constantly active. But you're learning to treat presence like a blade. Every time you show up, you're cutting through the noise. Every time you speak, you're shifting the temperature. Every time you leave, you create a vacuum. This turns you into what most people never become, a person of weight. Not because you say a lot, but because when you finally move, it means something. You must start asking yourself, why am I showing up here? What frame am I enforcing by entering this room? What silence will I leave behind when I exit? When your presence has intention, people feel it. When your absence has timing, people remember it. The king commands attention. The ghost controls it. You master both. Trust without mystery is fragile. Mystery without consistency is forgettable. But the hybrid, the king ghost you're building, is predictably unpredictable. This is the psychology of rhythm disruption. Most people fall into patterns. They respond the same way, speak the same way, think the same way. Eventually, others learn how to manipulate them because they're readable, but you are different. You maintain just enough consistency to anchor your identity, and just enough irregularity to remain untouchable. Here's how to train this. Sometimes show warmth, sometimes silence. Never let them calculate you fully. Sometimes appear early, sometimes vanish completely. Keep them on edge. Reward loyalty, but never dependency. If they start expecting your presence, disrupt. The point is simple. Let them know who you are, but never let them know what you'll do next. The king lays the laws. The ghost bends the rules. You enforce both. That's where real fear and real loyalty begin. You cannot play this dual role unless you master your emotional state. You must learn to be calm, cold, and clear even under heat. Because when people can't destabilize your nervous system, they can't destabilize your frame. This is called emotional sovereignty, the ability to observe your emotions without being driven by them. The king is grounded. The ghost is detached. You become both. You feel deeply but show selectively. You care intelligently but act strategically. You are loyal but never chained. This level of energetic control requires brutal self-discipline. You don't give energy to those who haven't earned it. You don't explain to those who misunderstand you on purpose. You don't argue with noise. You disappear from it. Every emotional leak is a signal of inner instability. So, the hybrid becomes still like a king and silent like a ghost until the moment requires movement. Then he moves without hesitation. This precision creates shock, because no one sees it coming. And that's what makes it unforgettable. In time, you'll start to see what others don't. That your greatest influence happens not when you try to control everything, but when you let your energy control the room for you. People will talk about you more when you're gone than when you're present. They'll feel your silence louder than your voice. They'll act differently around you, not because of fear but because of gravity. This is what the king ghost achieves. Unforced dominance. You don't have to shout. Your reputation moves ahead of you. You don't have to defend. Your absence cuts deeper than their insults. Over time, this becomes legacy. People remember those who were rare. They follow those who moved with precision. They emulate those who carried presence like fire and silence like ice. You're not building a personality. You're building a myth. One that doesn't need to be loud to last. This is the goal. To think like a king. Calculated, composed, sovereign, to move. Like a ghost, invisible, irregular, impactful. To merge both into a force of strategic unpredictability. The world is filled with noise, loud people, desperate people, attention seekers, predictable routines. You don't become powerful by joining that crowd. You become powerful by transcending it. When you merge the ruler with the ghost, you operate on a frequency most people can't even perceive, let alone prepare for. So, here's your final instruction. Be seen when it multiplies your influence. Be gone when it preserves your value. Move with reason. Disappear with purpose. Return with power. And remember, the most dangerous presence is the one they can't predict, can't manipulate, and can't stop thinking about. You were never meant to be ordinary. You were meant to be a force. But most will never activate it because they're too busy trying to be seen instead of becoming unforgettable. Now you know the blueprint. Think like a king, calm, strategic, sovereign. Move like a ghost, silent, rare, unpredictable. But if you forget this, if you go back to chasing, reacting, explaining, you will become just another echo in the noise. And this world doesn't remember echoes. Remembers those who moved the room without ever shouting. So vanish wisely. Speak only when it carves silence. And lead like your presence is prophecy. If this hit you deeper than any advice ever has, don't just scroll. Comment ghost mode below so I know who's really watching. And if you want the full system to reprogram your mind for this level of presence and power, I'll leave the link to Whisper's Cognitive Overclock and the Whisper Power Bundle in the description and pinned comment. Access it before they pull it. We're not here to entertain, we're here to rewire. Kings. I'll see you in the silence.